Okay. In the previous video, we spoke about how we create a subdomain. And the subdomain, again, it's part of the business. Usually they use it for a part of the business that wants some independently from the rest of the business. In our examples, we're calling it sales.audit.local. So I have DC child domain. I have my own original domain controller for audit.com, audit.local. So there are two different domains controller, two different servers. They have two different servers name. They have two different IP addresses. And this is the child domain. This is the father domain. Now, the idea between the two domains, since we are in the same, for instance, the child and a father domain, they have full communication between each other. And I can create a share folder in this server and share it with people from this server and the other opposite idea. So the idea behind it is your employees who work in the audit local domain can actually have access to the resources like printers, file, folder, share folder, blah, 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 on the subdomain and the other direction as well. So let's test that. On the subdomain, we're going to create a folder on the C drive. So I'll go to the C drive, I'll create a folder, and I'm call it sales uh, statistic or sales state. Good, whatever. Good. So on the domain controller, I will go to the tools, I will go to the users and computers. And then in here, I'm going to create the security groups for that share, as we usually do. So we notice that the tree here is a little bit different. For the OU tree is a little bit different, but that's fine. I'm not planning to build a massive OU for now. It's just a simple thing. So I'm going to create a new security group. That security group will call it access to sales stat RW. And here is the trick. I need to change that to universal. Good. In order for it to be communicating with the father domain. If I don't do that, it will not allow me, but I will show you now. I will just change it to universal. Good. Then I will create the other group, the read part only. I will not change it to universal. I'll keep it as a global for now, just to show you, but I should do put universal. You know what? Let's put it universal, then we'll show you the error later. So I created the two access group here. Then I'll go to the share folder, right click, properties, sharing, sharing, and then I'm going to select the access to groups. On this subdomain, I only have these two. I'll add them. I'll give the read-write access. So now I created my share. My share is ready as we do the share folder in every explanation. So now the part that I'm going to talk about is how to give people the share access. So if somebody from this domain, let's say Miss Dana from the subdomain, from the sales domain want access, I will go to the OU, to the group policy, sorry, there's a group, security group that's called access read write. I double click on it. I'll go to members. I'll click add. I'll say Dana name. When I click check, it will says Dana. She is at the sales team that loaded that local. And you look here, it's looking for it where on the sales team. So he's looking for it in the subdomain. I click add. He added it. Now, if I want to add Miss Rima from my original domain, so if I go to my original domain, I'll go to the tools and users here. So I have under HR or under finance, I have Rima. So Rima, she's my accountant. She wants to help me with the subdomain accounting stuff, for example. So here I'll go add on my child domain. I'll go add. But now I want to search for Rima. But Rima is not in the child domain. Rima is on the father domain. So if I type Rima here and I search, I will not find it because the system is looking for Rima in the sales domain, in the subdomain. She's member of the father domain. So I have to click on location. And you see I have the full tree here. Then I'll go up. I'll check Ode local. And I have sales. So I can say I want to search in the Ode local. So when I search for it there and I do Rima, I check names. Now he will show me two people here. He will show me that I have Mrs. Rima and I have Mr. Rimano. And I look here, he will tell me which OU she is member of, and he'll give me the details of that user before I add it. So I'll check Rima, I'll add her. Now this is Rima at Ode.local. That's the lady that I'm looking for. You see, it's that at Ode, not at sales. Good. So now I have two people, one from the child domain, one of the father domain, and they both have access to that folder. So I click apply, I click OK, that's fine. Now if I go to the BC number 2 or BC number 1, wherever Rima is logged in, so I think on BC number 2, in BC number 2 I have, who is here logged in, just to verify. So this is Rima who's logged in here. I'm sure about this. Okay, so this is Rima who logged in here. So now from Rima, I want to access the share. So the share, I will go to it through the computer name, because remember the share folder that we created on the C drive of that domain controller. So I click on the start menu, I click // Ode minus DC3 minus sales, or I can do the IP address, whatever will work with you guys. Good. I'll go here. I will see the shares. There is a chance that the computer here in this stage might ask me for the computer name, sorry, for the username and the password. Just put Rima's username and password, that's fine. If it asks you, usually it doesn't ask, but sometimes it does. So once it loads, show me the folders. Here is the sale test. I double click on it. I'll be able to log in, access it. I'll be able to write on it and do all the changes that I want to do on that folder. So now I double click on that sales. It's open. I can go inside. I have a read write permission, so I can create a folder or create a file or do the settings that I need. That's fine. I have an access to the server. Okay. Now back to our child domain. When I created the security group in the child domain, when I created these access to groups, I asked you to create them as a global, as a universal, sorry. If I created them as a global by default and didn't change it, so let's do one here called DDDD. When I go to DDDD to add somebody to it, I'll go to members. I want to add somebody. I click on add. You see, it can add people from the sales domain. When I click location, it doesn't see the father domain. So I cannot see the father domain. So now in this scenario, I cannot add Rima because Rima on the father domain. So I have to go back to general. I change it to universal group, click apply. Now I go back to member. I click add. Now I click on the location. It will take some time, of course, to refresh. Good. So it's universal. Add locations. It's refresh. Now you can see the domain. Good. So this is how you can give access to people from both sides. The same thing will happen from the server one. So from the father domain. So here is my father domain. Here is all the domain. Good. So on that father domain, if I go to any access group, I have it here. Remember those access group that we did for the folders, access to, access to, access to. If I go to any of them and it's global, I have to change it to universal. Okay. So if I go to any of them, I go to members, I can add members. Now by default, let's look for Ode. I click here, I can see the child domain sales. So when I click sales, I can search for Dana. And now I can find Dana and it says Dana in the child domain. Good. I click OK. Now Dana have the read-write access to the finance folder on the father domain. So the user is 100% visible between the two. It's easy. It's not that complicated. Those guys can see those guys. Those guys can see those guys. You have a full system up and running. So this is how we can share resources between the father domain and the child domain.